So Marco and Rachel scout out the area around Gaff's house, looking for the hive all these bees are coming from. Marco assumes he's going to need to follow a bee in order to find the path through the force field, but this isn't much of a problem as bee eyesight is actually capable of seeing Andalite force fields and sussing out the little tunnels Gaff has created to allow the bees in. No, what is much of a problem is Marco succumbing to bees' natural instincts to sting Nicolas Cage in the eyes. What is super much of a problem are the vicious killer robber flies, which are essentially insect vampires from hell. Rachel has to save Marco's butt a few times before he finally makes it into the greenhouse. But for all his sneakiness, he only confirms what he already knew, that Myrtle is just nowhere to be found. Does Myrtle even exist? That's the subject of the Animorphs' next meeting, which is happening at the barn like every meeting should at this point. So if Myrtle doesn't exist, or at least isn't there for some reason, then what is Gaff playing at? Suddenly, Axe is hit with inspiration. That odd spasm, wanting to meet with what Gaff assumes is an adult Andalite, the alien marijuana? Gaff is sick. Ilsipar root has a medicinal use as well. In great quantities, it eases the pain of Sula's disease. This is a genetically programmed disease. It causes increasing pain in the joints as well as the muscles, extreme at the end. In some, it causes progressive blindness. It strikes in the prime of life and is always fatal. You know, disease in Animorphs is the weirdest thing. At least in the slice of the universe we see in the books, the conventional ideas of disease, that which is caused by bacteria and traditional viruses, is highly uncommon. In all the various worlds the Animorphs and other characters have been to, not a single concern was given about disease crossing species in that same disastrous manner isolated groups of people coming in contact might spread diseases, like, bringing smallpox to the Native Americans. Morphing eliminates these kind of diseases. The stuff you gotta worry about is the more abstract stuff, things that directly affect either the DNA or the atomic structure of creatures in various nebulous ways. There's Sula's disease, there was Axe's inflamed tria gland that somehow made the Animorphs sick. We've seen 2 independent attempts at biowarfare with programmable viruses that attack subatomic structures. And Rachel is allergic to crocodile DNA. She's not allergic to crocodiles, but specifically crocodile DNA. Even the fact that Myrtle somehow cannot be given morphing powers falls in line with this idea that disease on a cellular level isn't really something to worry about. It's what affects our genetics and atomic substructures that we really need to worry about. There's no cure for the cosmic cold. The only real way to survive Sula's disease is to become a Nothlit, preferably a Nothlit of another young adult Andalite. So chances are Gaff wants to meet Axe's prince so that he can acquire him. The only move to make now is to give Gaff that meeting. So everyone but Jake acquires and morph bees and sneak into the house while Jake rings the doorbell. Gaff lets Jake in, Jake assuming the role of an Andalite and human morph, and he totally sells it. I don't know, Jake seems to really have a knack at playing and outsmarting Andalites, but when it comes to something simple like Yerk's submarine, his brain locks up and it's all, "Durr, let's throw whales at it." Gaff has another nasty spasm and escalates the conflict, pointing a shredder at Jake, but the rest of the Animorphs break in through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man and surround Gaff. Gaff realizes the rest of the Animorphs are human, and after some calm assurances, tells them what's really going on. Yes, Gaff is sick, but he's not really looking for an Andalite to morph, otherwise he'd just have morphed Myrtle. Myrtle is real, and Visor 3 learned about the tape that was sent to Unsolved Mysteries, so he sent a squad to go out and capture the crippled Andalite. The Visor then tried to use Myrtle to draw out Gaff, but Myrtle informed the Visor of Gaff's illness, putting Gaff on the shit list of potential hosts. Because there's no way these 2 Andalites might have important military secrets or understandings of Andalite technology that the Yeerks need. If they aren't totally perfect physically, they ain't worth having. Visor 3 instead offers to release Myrtle if Gaff can deliver one of the Andalite bandits to him. The Animorphs have a better option, though, swooping in, freeing Myrtle, and saving the day. Of course, they need to know where Myrtle is, made difficult because the Yeerks keep moving him. But before we figure that problem out, there's still this thing about Axe's attitudes toward the disabled. Axe interrupted. "We cannot risk our lives for a Vekel." Okay, Axeman, I said, my voice a little less unsteady. I've been cutting you slack on this handicap thing because you're part of the team. But when you talk like this guy is some sort of dirty, worthless thing, I have to say you're just not one of us. I do not, and have never pretended to be human, Axe stated. Rachel snorted. You're so full of it, Marco. I seem to recall you calling that Hewlett-Aldershot guy who was in a coma a vegetable. No, wait, a carrot to be exact. Not the same thing, I shot back. That was black comedy, gallows humor, not an open and implied insult. Actions do speak louder than words, Cassie said quietly. Thank you. I might not always say the right thing, but most times I do the right thing. Or try to, at least. My intentions, I added, smirking, are good. Grr, I am so gonna write a Tumblr post at you! We'll get more into the implications of this bit of character stuff later. Right now we have an Endlight prisoner to save. But how to find him? Myrtle and I have been the closest of friends since our childhood, he said finally. Unless we are on different planets, we can hear each other's thoughts speak. Not perfectly. Often exact words are not clear, but the sound of Myrtle's voice is always with me. It helps me to know he is alive. Yes, we're gonna find Myrtle through the power of friendship. Really, really close friendship. The kind of friendship where you store each other's penises in each other's anuses to keep them warm. We'll also talk about that later. So the Animorphs and Gaff fly around town, using Gaff's friendship as magic powers to try and locate Myrtle, which eventually leads them to an old train yard full of decommissioned trains. They find a U-Haul truck and a small army of Hork-Bajir guarding it, and it doesn't take long for the Yeerks to notice the Animorphs and raise the alarm, so everyone goes into battle morphs. We glided off the roof of the car and demorphed. Then I went to Gorilla, with cinderblock fists, Jake to Tiger, with deadly claws and teeth, Cassie to Wolf, lithe and tireless. Rachel used her elephant morph, perfect for bulldozing and busting through pesky walls of metal. Hey, Dealin' Dan Hawk here with another live commercial for Dealin' Dan Hawk's Used Car Emporium. Come on down and check out our wide selection of trains, boxcars, and cabooses from as far back as the 1890s. The perfect step up for the model train enthusiast who... Oh, look who it is! It's that fucking elephant! I knew you'd show up, motherfucker! I am ready for you! So there's a massive fight, but the Animorphs are victorious and Myrtle is freed. Myrtle Ilskar Elmond, Axe said, respectfully, it has been an honor to meet you. I will always remember you as you were. As someone without a disgusting deformity that makes them a useless burden on society. Kill yourself! I'm out, bitches! No character development for me, please! There's a final scene where Marco visits Myrtle at the house and lets him know that he and the rest of the Animorphs will be there to support him when Gaff eventually passes away. It's sweet, but enough about that. Let's get to the post-book follow-up so we can discuss the fucking elephant in the room. Post-book follow-up. Gay Andalites, get your gay Andalites here. Everyone who reads this book is all about them, gay Andalites. We've got a lot to unpack here, so bear with me. First off, there's this idea floating around that this book is about our attitudes about disabled people and acceptance of their worth. I understand why you might think that. What with characters stopping the plot in its tracks to talk about Axe's attitudes toward the disabled, Kay Applegate herself commented that this book was her belated attempt to deal with the issues of disability. Except she doesn't do that. Not really. This book doesn't actually have a single thing to do with disability. Myrtle, the disabled character, doesn't prove he's capable or useful or even three-dimensional. He's barely in the book and only serves as a damsel in distress. His disabilities only serve as a plot device to keep him from escaping your capture and to keep him from being infested. If I was a disabled reader, I'd hardly call that empowering. It's only Axe with this problem of discrimination. The rest of the Animorphs demolish and openly challenge his views and don't need to be convinced themselves. Yes, this is a step backwards for Axe's character, but for the sake of fairness, this book is so close to number 38, The Arrival, that the ghostwriter might not have gotten the chance to read it and see that ending speech where Axe is all about how humans and Hork-Bajir and whatever are his family. She might not have been as privy to Axe's character development. But Axe doesn't take anything away from this. Despite all the scolding he gets, he doesn't become more accepting by the end of the book. His character is pretty much the same throughout. So what was the point of all of this? Well, it's pretty clear that this isn't supposed to be an Axe-specific problem, but a problem with Andalite culture, that Andalites are just a few steps away from tossing imperfect babies off cliffs. This is not about our perceptions of the disabled, but using a negative perception of the disabled to show us another ugly side of the Andalite culture, and one way in which human culture has surpassed it. Okay, I guess, but the issues with that are twofold. One, it suggests that human prejudice against the disabled is something that is fixed. And sure, we're not throwing babies off cliffs anymore, but like racism, sexism, and various other isms, we can't just say ableism is over and hold moral superiority over other cultures. Two, this book is only one removed from a book where we saw 4 fully fleshed out Andalite characters that each represented different ways in which Andalites can be total dicks, capped off a long succession of books that painted Earth's saviors as flawed beings. In comparison, this book has all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. And being so close to that book, it's starting to feel less like presenting the shades of gray of the Andalite-Year conflict, and more like a complete character assassination of the entire Andalite race. This is not social commentary on ableism. This is using ableism as a weapon to discredit fictional aliens. This is neither productive nor interesting. I personally think the ableism stuff should have been cut entirely. It's brought up again more successfully in a future book, and there's a far more interesting subtext that's been left in this book's doorstep. Yes, again, as most people like to put it, gay Andalites. In the interest of fairness, it is never explicitly stated that Gaff and Myrtle are a gay couple, but there are so many signifiers, so much coding, that pretty much the only people that don't read a potential romantic relationship between these two one-off characters are those who are too young to know what gay relationships actually are. There are those that argue that assuming a character or characters is gay and or are in a gay romantic relationship runs the risk of stereotyping, and I can sympathize with that. For example, saying Rainbow Dash from My Little Pony is gay just because she's a bit of a tomboy, it forces a stereotype that women who have masculine hobbies are most likely lesbians. And that's bad, kiddo. Unless Rainbow Dash actually is gay now. I don't know. I haven't watched anything from that show since the 2nd season. It's also a thing in fan communities to construct gay relationships between characters in fan art and fan fiction, and I'm not exactly opposed to that in theory, but what winds up happening is that any two characters who share any minute of friendship end up getting shipped together and having erotic fiction written about them where one of them poops on each other's chest or something. But I really don't think that's what's happening here. The fan shipping thing, not the chest pooping, though I'm sure that's not happening either. There are enough signifiers here to suggest Gaff and Myrtle are a legit couple without falling into, well, I won't say falling into stereotypes, but not falling into the louder, more damaging stereotypes. The closest thing in this book to that is their house, which is kept impeccably clean, tastefully furnished with light colors, including some pink things, and without any apparent masculine influence. But beyond that, we have a relationship that is so strong, they have a strong empathy bond that is more commonly associated with identical twins. They care for each other through their injuries and sickness. They would give up their lives for each other. They crashed on Earth after their ships locked together in a very sugarly romantic way. Gaff and Myrtle's respective hyper-masculine and slight agile body types, well, the words seme and uke spring to mind. So the question we have now is whether or not this gay subtext is intentional. Until Kay Applegate or the ghostwriter says anything directly about it, we can only make assumptions. What we do know is that Catherine Applegate and Michael Grant are both pro-gay rights. They're also kind of proto-hippies and just wrote space cannabis into the book. And homosexuality is directly brought up twice in the series. There's that bit in number 23 of The Pretender about gay kids in the Boy Scouts, and gay acceptance will be mentioned along with religious and class acceptance in Megamorphs number 4. I am open to the possibility that this subtext might have been actual text at one point, that this book was originally about a romantic same-sex relationship, but was scaled back, possibly because of publisher concerns. But there's no actual hard evidence of that. It might have been intentional subtext, it might have been completely unintentional. But until someone says anything definitive, we can only speculate. But wouldn't that have been awesome? Wouldn't a book in the series aimed at middle schoolers with an engaging same-sex couple been totally awesome? Speaking as someone who is, shall we say, not entirely heteronormative, I know it would have been nice to see some positive representation in the things I read, the shows I watched, the music I listened to. Even 14 years later, our media is still pretty crap about that kind of thing. This was the nearest the books ever got. And not utilizing what's there feels like a wasted opportunity, especially since the book doesn't really commit to the ableism stuff. And that's kind of my feelings on the book as a whole. A wasted opportunity. It reads well, there's nothing all that stupid about the plot. Outside of Ax and Marco, nobody really seems to have anything important to do or say, and Marco's only as involved in the plot as he is because it's his turn to narrate. The book reads well, the ghostwriter proves effective at writing Marco, and there's some really neat action pieces near the end, and Gaff and Myrtle strike as potentially interesting characters. But like most interesting side characters in the series, they don't make another appearance. This book is really close to doing something worthwhile, so close to being one of the must-reads of the series. But as is, it is a decent, if directionless, affair. I give number 40 The Other a 6 out of 10.